Coca-Cola.
The Weight of Choosing. A novel. Chapter 1. The Easy Life. The alarm goes off at 7:30. Same as always. I reach across the empty bed, still a queen size, though I don't know why, and hit snooze. The apartment is quiet in that particular way. That means no one else breathes here. I make coffee for one. Toast for one. Check my phone for messages that won't come from the person I'm not thinking about. 3 years. 3 years since I chose the easy life. The commute to work is smooth. No stops at the pharmacy. No calls to doctors. No rearranging meetings because someone had a bad night. Just me, the radio, and the comfortable numbness of routine. At the office, I'm the guy who never has to leave early. Never has to take personal calls. Never has to explain why I look tired, because I sleep 8 hours every night in a bed that stays exactly as I left it. You're lucky, my colleague Mark says during lunch. No wife, no kids, no complications. You can do whatever you want. Whatever I want. The phrase sits in my stomach like undigested food. After work, I stop at the gym. Then the grocery store. Dinner for one. TV for one. Wine for one. Bed for one. This is the life I chose. The life I fought for. The life I convinced myself I deserved. But here's the thing nobody tells you about getting everything you want. Sometimes you discover you wanted the wrong things. The apartment is perfect. Modern. Clean. Expensive. It has none of the modifications I installed in the old place. No grab bars. No shower seat. No ramp at the entrance. No pill organizers on the kitchen counter. No evidence that someone who needed help ever lived here. I pay the rent on time. I keep it spotless. I bring dates here sometimes, women who compliment the view, the furniture, the wine selection. Women who don't ask about the absence of photographs, the lack of personal history, the way I never mention my past. They don't know I bought this silence. That I paid for this emptiness with someone else's security. The doorbell rings. It's Sarah, the marketing executive I've been seeing for 2 months. She's beautiful, successful, uncomplicated. She talks about her job, her friends, her weekend plans. She never asks me to carry anything heavier than a conversation. You're so independent, she says, settling into the couch. It's refreshing. Most men my age come with so much baggage. Baggage. As if love were a burden. As if caring for someone were a weight to be shared. We order takeout. Watch a movie. Make love with the efficiency of 2 people who aren't really making anything at all. She sleeps soundly beside me, her breathing even and untroubled. I lie awake staring at the ceiling, remembering another kind of breathing. Laboured sometimes. Interrupted by coughing fits. Accompanied by the rattle of pills being shaken from bottles. The breathing of someone who had to work for each breath, who never took the simple act of sleeping for granted. At 3 in the morning, I get up and stand by the window. The city spreads out below me, full of lights and life and stories I'll never know. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment I helped pay for, someone else is probably awake too. Someone who trusted me with her future and got betrayal instead. Someone who loved me when I was weak and got abandoned when she became weak. Someone whose breathing I used to monitor, whose pain I used to share, whose strength I used to underestimate. I chose this view, this silence, this freedom. But standing here in my perfect apartment, looking out at the sleeping city, I can't shake the feeling that I chose wrong. The easy life, it turns out, is the hardest one to live with. Chapter 2, The Decline. It started with dropped keys, then spilled coffee. Tremor she tried to hide by keeping her hands busy. I'm just tired, Noelle would say, forcing a smile that I pretended to believe. But I noticed everything. The way she gripped the banister going upstairs. How she started using both hands to carry her purse. The slight shuffle that crept into her walk. I should have been concerned. A good partner would have been concerned. Instead, I was annoyed. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Parkinson's disease. Progressive. Incurable. Manageable, the doctor said, with medication and therapy and lifestyle adjustments. Adjustments. The word felt like a trap closing around my throat. Dr. Rahman was patient, thorough, kind. She explained the stages, the symptoms, the treatments. She gave us pamphlets and websites and support group information. She made it sound like a journey we'd take together. Many couples find that facing this challenge actually strengthens their relationship, she said. Noelle nodded, taking notes with a hand that trembled slightly. She was already adapting, already fighting, already becoming someone I didn't recognize. We'll figure it out, she said in the car afterward. We always do. We. As if this were happening to both of us. As if her disease were our disease. But I could feel it already, the weight of it settling on my shoulders. The future I'd imagined for us crumbling and reshaping into something I never signed up for. The first medication made her nauseous. She'd take it with breakfast and spend the next hour fighting to keep food down. I'd hear her in the bathroom, retching, and feel a familiar resentment building in my chest. This wasn't supposed to be my life. The second medication helped with the tremors but made her drowsy. She'd fall asleep during movies, mid-conversation, sometimes even while eating. I'd find myself talking to an empty room, finishing stories to no one. The third medication worked better, but it was expensive. Insurance covered some of it, but not all. Our budget, once comfortable, became a constant calculation of co-pays and deductibles. Maybe I should look for a different job, I suggested one evening, watching her organize her pills into a weekly dispenser. Something with better insurance. Or maybe I should go back to work, she said. Part-time. I could still teach. She was an art teacher before we moved in together. Passionate, creative, full of stories about her students. But that was before the tremors, before the fatigue, before the disease that was slowly stealing pieces of her. Noelle, be realistic. The words came out harsher than I intended. She looked up from her pills, hurt flickering across her face. I am being realistic, she said quietly. I'm being realistic about what I can still do, not what I can't. That was the difference between us. She saw possibilities where I saw limitations. She saw adaptations where I saw restrictions. She saw a life to be lived where I saw a burden to be carried. The physical therapy appointment started twice a week. I'd drive her there, wait in the lobby reading magazines, drive her home. She'd come out exhausted but determined, full of exercises to practice and goals to reach. Watch this, she'd say, showing me how to transfer from sitting to standing with less assistance. I'm getting stronger. She was getting stronger. But I was getting weaker. Every accommodation we made to the house felt like a surrender. The grab bars in the bathroom. The shower seat. The ramp Marcus and I built over the front steps. Each modification was a reminder of what we were losing, what we'd never get back. Our friends started treating us differently. Dinner invitations became less frequent. When we did go out, I'd watch them watching her, the way she moved slowly, how she sometimes struggled with utensils, the careful way she navigated stairs. They feel sorry for us, I told her after a particularly awkward evening. They feel sorry for you, she corrected. They admire me. She was right. I could see it in their eyes. The way they looked at her with respect, even awe. The way they looked at me with pity. Poor Antoine. Stuck with a sick wife. What a burden. What a sacrifice. I started to believe it. Started to see myself as the victim in this story. Started to resent the woman who'd had the audacity to get sick and ruin our perfect life. The worst part was how patient she was with me. How understanding. How she'd apologize for things that weren't her fault. I'm sorry dinner took so long, she'd say after struggling with buttons or zippers. I'm sorry I'm so tired, she'd say after falling asleep during a movie. I'm sorry this is so hard, she'd say when I'd sigh, when I'd snap, when I'd let my frustration show. She was apologizing for being sick. And I was letting her. 3 months after the diagnosis, I started fantasizing about what life would be like without her. Not that I wanted her to die, I wasn't that cruel. But I wondered what it would feel like to come home to an empty house. To make plans without considering medication schedules. To date someone healthy, someone easy, someone who didn't require modifications. 6 months in, I started staying late at work. Volunteering for projects. Finding reasons not to come home to the sound of pill bottles and the sight of adaptive equipment. 9 months in, I started to hate her. Not for being sick. For making me the kind of person who could hate someone for being sick. The man I used to be, the one who fell in love with her smile, her laugh, her endless optimism, that man was disappearing. Replaced by someone bitter, resentful, small. And she could see it happening. I know she could. But she loved me anyway. Kept believing in us anyway. Kept fighting for a future I was already planning to escape. That's when I started to plan her eviction. Because it's easier to blame the mirror than to face what's looking back at you. Chapter 3. The Justification. I became an expert at building the case against us. Every morning, I'd catalogue the ways my life had become smaller. The social invitations that stopped coming. The spontaneous plans that were no longer possible. The career opportunities one couldn't pursue because I needed to be available for appointments, emergencies, the endless logistics of living with someone who required care. I kept a mental ledger of sacrifices. The vacation to Japan we cancelled. The weekend trips that became too complicated. The restaurants we couldn't go to because they weren't accessible. The friends I'd lost touch with because I was always tired, always stressed, always carrying the weight of two people's lives. But I was careful. I never said any of this out loud. Instead, I presented myself as the devoted boyfriend, the one who was handling everything so well. "You're a saint," my mother said during one of her visits. "I don't know how you do it." "Antoine's been incredible," Noelle would tell her friends. "I couldn't get through this without him." The praise felt like poison. Every compliment was a reminder of the lie I was living, the resentment I was hiding, the exit I was planning. I started researching online. Not treatment options or support groups, but legal questions. Tenant rights. Eviction procedures. What happens when someone isn't on the lease but has been living in a place for years? The apartment was in my name. I'd been paying the rent since before we moved in together. Legally, I had rights. Emotionally, morally, I had none. But I was past caring about the emotional or moral dimensions of my situation. I joined online forums for caregiver burnout. I learned the language of martyrdom. I practiced the vocabulary of victimhood. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm" became my mantra. "You have to take care of yourself first," I tell my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "You didn't sign up for this," I'd whisper when she was sleeping. But I had signed up for it. We'd been together for 4 years. I'd said in sickness and in health at her cousin's wedding, joking about how we'd never need those words. I'd held her when she cried about her father's cancer. I'd promised to be there for whatever came. I'd signed up for it. I just hadn't read the fine print. The turning point came during a particularly bad week. Noelle had started a new medication that made her violently ill. She spent 3 days barely able to keep water down, and I found myself feeling not sympathy, but fury. Fury at the time I was missing from work. Fury at the plans I had to cancel. Fury at the way she looked at me with gratitude when I brought her crackers and ginger ale, as if I were being generous instead of just barely decent. "Maybe we should consider other living arrangements," I said one evening, trying to sound casual. She was on the couch, curled up with a heating pad. The tremors were worse when she was tired, and she looked fragile in a way that should have softened my heart. Instead, it hardened it. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, maybe this isn't working. Maybe we both need space to figure things out." Space. She said the word like she was tasting something bitter. "You want space from me?" "I want what's best for both of us." "What's best for both of us, or what's best for you?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. Antoine, I'm scared enough about my future without having to worry about whether you're going to be in it. That's not fair, I said. I've been here for everything. Every appointment, every medication change, every bad day. I've put my life on hold for you. I never asked you to put your life on hold. You didn't have to ask. It's what happens when someone gets sick. Everything stops. Everything revolves around the disease. My life revolves around the disease because I have the disease. Your life revolves around the disease because you've chosen to make it about you. The accusation hit like a slap. Because it was true. I had made her illness about me. Her pain about my inconvenience. Her struggle about my sacrifice. Maybe that's the problem, I said. Maybe I'm not the right person for this. Maybe you are not. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire we couldn't put out. So what are you saying? She asked finally. I'm saying maybe we should think about other options. Other options for what? For living situations. For arrangements. For before us. I couldn't say the word. Couldn't say a breakup or leaving or eviction. I hid behind euphemisms, behind the language of mutual decision-making, behind the pretense that this was somehow for both of us. You want me to move out. I want us to figure out what's best. For you. What's best for you. For both of us. Stop saying that. Her voice was sharp now, cutting through my careful neutral tone. Stop pretending this is about both of us. This is about you wanting your old life back. This is about you deciding that I'm too much work. That's not. It is. It's exactly that. You're tired of being the boyfriend of the sick girl. You're tired of people feeling sorry for you. You're tired of having to think about someone else's needs. Every word was true. Every accusation was accurate. But instead of feeling shame, I felt relief. Finally, someone was saying what I'd been thinking. Finally, the pretense was dropping. Maybe I am, I said. It was the first honest thing I'd said in months. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded, as if something had been settled. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll start looking for somewhere else to live. Just like that. No fight. No tears. No pleading. Just acceptance of the thing I'd been too cowardly to ask for directly. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. That night, as she made phone calls and searched rental websites, I sat in the kitchen building my justification. Rehearsing the story I'd tell friends, family, myself. I was burned out. Overwhelmed. Sacrificing my own mental health. She deserved someone who could give her what she needed. I deserved someone who wasn't a burden. The words felt true in my mouth. They felt reasonable, mature, even compassionate. But they felt like lies in my heart. Because the truth was simpler and uglier. I was abandoning someone who loved me because loving her had become inconvenient. And I was going to spend the rest of my life pretending that was the right choice. Chapter 4. The Eviction. The legal consultation lasted 45 minutes and cost me $300. The lawyer was young, professional, and completely uninterested in the moral dimensions of my situation. She's not on the lease, he confirmed, reviewing the documents I brought. You have legal grounds to terminate her residency with proper notice. What's proper notice? "30 days in writing. Keep copies of everything. If she refuses to leave, you can begin formal eviction proceedings." Eviction proceedings. The words felt like stones in my mouth. Is there any way she could claim tenant rights? We've been together for years. Domestic partnership doesn't automatically confer tenant rights. Unless she can prove she's been paying rent directly to the landlord, she's considered a guest whose welcome has been withdrawn. A guest whose welcome has been withdrawn. He made it sound so simple, so clean. Like she was someone who'd overstayed her invitation to a dinner party. The lawyer handed me a form letter. Fill in the blanks. Serve it properly. Document everything. If she's reasonable, she'll leave quietly. If not, we can discuss your options. Reasonable. As if there were anything reasonable about what I was doing. I carried the letter home in my briefcase like a loaded gun. For 3 days, I couldn't bring myself to fill it out. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand, staring at the blank spaces where I was supposed to write her name, the date, the terms of her removal from the life we'd built together. Meanwhile, she was making her own preparations. I'd find her on the phone with landlords, explaining her situation with a calm that made my chest ache. "I'll need a ground floor apartment," I'd hear her say. "Wheelchair accessible, if possible." Yes, I understand the deposit requirements. She was planning her exile with the same methodical care she'd once used to plan our vacations. The same attention to detail she'd brought to organizing our shared life. I wanted to feel relieved. Instead, I felt like a coward. On Thursday evening, I filled out the form. My hand shook as I wrote her name in the space marked tenant occupant. As I checked the box for failure to pay rent because it was the cleanest legal option, even though she'd never owed rent because she'd never been responsible for it. I was rewriting our history, turning love into a landlord-tenant relationship, making her presence in our home a legal matter instead of a personal one. The form required a reason for termination. I wrote lease violation and felt something die inside me. Friday morning, I left the letter on the kitchen counter before work. I couldn't bring myself to hand it to her directly. Couldn't look at her face when she read it. Couldn't witness the moment when love became paperwork. I spent the day at the office trying to focus on spreadsheets and conference calls. But my phone felt like a weight in my pocket. Every email notification made my heart race. I kept expecting her to call, to scream, to beg, to fight. She never called. When I came home, the letter was gone. She was in the bedroom, packing books into boxes with the same careful attention she'd always brought to everything. "Did you read it?" I asked from the doorway. "I read it." "Do you have any questions?" She looked up from the box she was filling. Her face was calm, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "Just one," she said. "When you look back on this, what story are you going to tell yourself?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I didn't know yet what story I was going to tell. I only knew it would be a lie. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in civilized cruelty. We shared the apartment like polite strangers. She packed systematically, room by room, taking only what was clearly hers. She left behind the things we'd bought together, the couch we'd picked out, the dishes we'd chosen, the art we'd hung on the walls. She left behind the grab bars in the bathroom. She left behind the ramp at the front door. She left behind the shower seat. She left behind all the modifications we'd made to turn our space into a place where she could live safely. Because where she was going, she'd have to start over. Make new modifications. Install new safety measures. Build a new life adapted to her needs. I told myself I was being generous by letting her leave the equipment. Really, I was being practical. Taking it down would have meant acknowledging what it was for, what it represented, what I was taking away from her. Friends started asking questions. Marcus wanted to know why Noelle was looking for a new place. My mother wondered if everything was okay. Colleagues noticed I seemed distracted. I perfected the art of the non-answer. We're going through some changes. We're figuring things out. It's complicated. The truth was simple. I was destroying the life of someone who loved me because I was too selfish to share her burden. But the truth was also unspeakable. 2 days before she was scheduled to leave, I found her in the kitchen at midnight, crying over a box of our photographs. Pictures of us hiking, traveling, celebrating birthdays. Pictures from before. Pictures of the people we used to be. "I'm trying to figure out which ones to take," she said without looking up. "We're in all of them together." "Take whatever you want," I said. "I don't want to take our memories. I want to leave them here. But I don't want you to throw them away." "I won't throw them away." "Promise?" "I promise." It was the first promise I'd made to her in months. The first one I intended to keep. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you love me?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have said no. Could have made it clean, final, easier for both of us. Instead, I told the truth. "Yes." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I love me more." It was the cruelest honest thing I'd ever said. But it was honest. She nodded slowly, as if she'd expected that answer. As if she'd known all along what kind of man I really was. "At least you're finally telling the truth," she said. On moving day, I went to work early and stayed late. I couldn't watch her pack the last of her things. Couldn't see her take one final look around the apartment we'd shared. Couldn't witness the moment when our life together became just another story about something that used to be. When I came home, she was gone. The apartment was clean, organized, empty of her presence. She'd left her key on the kitchen counter next to a note. Thank you for 4 good years. I hope you find what you're looking for. I stood in the silence of my recovered space and tried to feel victorious. Free. Relieved. Instead, I felt like a man who'd won a war by murdering his own army. The apartment was mine again. Clean, quiet, uncomplicated. And I'd never felt more alone. Chapter 5: The Hollow Victory. Freedom tastes like nothing. That's what I discovered in the weeks after Noel left. I'd imagined it would taste like celebration, like relief, like the sweet satisfaction of a burden finally lifted. Instead, it tasted like the air in an empty room. I had everything I thought I wanted. A clean apartment. A schedule that belonged only to me. No medications to track, no appointments to drive to, no modifications to accommodate. I could eat whatever I wanted, watch whatever I wanted, sleep as late as I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted. The problem was I didn't want to do anything. The first weekend, I stayed in bed until noon, luxuriating in the silence. No alarm for pills. No need to get up and help with anything. Just me and the empty apartment and all the time in the world. By Sunday afternoon, I was climbing the walls. I went to the gym. Bought groceries. Cooked dinner for 1. Watched a movie without interruption. Went to bed early in a bed that stayed exactly as I'd left it. This was the life I'd fought for. This was what I'd sacrificed everything to get. And it felt like dying. I threw myself into work with the dedication of a man running from something. I volunteered for projects. Worked late. Took on weekend assignments. My productivity soared. My boss noticed. My colleagues were impressed. You seem really focused lately, Sarah from accounting said. What's your secret? My secret was that I destroyed my life to avoid living it. Dating was easier now. I could make plans without checking with anyone. I could stay out late without worrying about someone waiting up. I could bring women home without having to explain medical equipment or medication schedules. I met Jennifer at a coffee shop. Lisa at a book club. Amanda through a dating app. Each one was beautiful, successful, uncomplicated. Each one represented the kind of life I'd convinced myself I wanted. But when they asked about my past, I found myself editing. Cutting out for years of my life. Pretending Noel had never existed. Creating a fiction where I'd been single and focused on my career, available and uncomplicated. You're so put together, Jennifer said after our 3rd date. It's refreshing to meet someone who has their life figured out. I had my life figured out. I'd figured out how to run away from anything that required sacrifice. I'd figured out how to choose myself over everyone else. I'd figured out how to be alone. The apartment felt different now. Bigger. Emptier. I'd removed all the modifications, painted over the holes where grab bars had been mounted, stored the shower seat in the basement. There was no evidence that someone who needed help had ever lived there. But I could still see them. The ghost marks on the walls. The memory of equipment. The shadow of a life I'd erased. I started having dreams. Nightmares where I was the one who needed help, where I was the one asking for accommodations, where I was the one being told I was too much trouble. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, reaching for someone who wasn't there. My mother called one evening. I ran into Noelle's friend Karen at the grocery store, she said. She mentioned Noelle's doing well in her new place. That's nice, I said, trying to sound casual. She's teaching again. Part-time. Karen says she's really brave. Brave. The word hit like a physical blow. Because I knew what brave looked like. I'd lived with it for months. I'd watched it take pills every morning, do exercises every evening, face each day with determination and grace. I'd chosen cowardice over bravery, comfort over courage. Are you okay, sweetheart? My mother asked. You sound tired. I'm fine, I lied. Just busy with work. Work became my refuge. The place where I could pretend to be important, necessary, valuable. Where I could focus on problems that had solutions, challenges that could be overcome with effort and intelligence. But even at work, I felt like an imposter. Like someone playing the role of a successful person while slowly hollowing out from the inside. My colleagues started inviting me to happy hours, dinner parties, weekend gatherings. I was the bachelor again. The guy who could stay out late, who didn't have to check with anyone, who was available for whatever. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. At Marcus's birthday party, I found myself in the corner, watching couples. The way they checked in with each other. The way they shared jokes and stories. The way they moved through the world as a unit, considering each other's needs without resentment. You're quiet tonight, Marcus said, joining me by the window. Just tired. How are you doing? Really? It was the first time anyone had asked. The first time someone had looked past my careful performance to see the wreckage underneath. I'm fine, I said automatically. You don't look fine. You look like someone who won a war he didn't want to fight. The accuracy of the observation startled me. What do you mean? I mean you got what you said you wanted. But you don't look happy about it. I stared out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in an apartment I'd never seen, a woman was probably organizing her pills for the week. Probably doing her exercises. Probably living the life I decided was too difficult to share. Sometimes getting what you want isn't the same as wanting what you get, I said. Marcus nodded. Sometimes we make choices that solve the wrong problem. That night, I went home to my empty apartment and sat on the couch we'd bought together. The one she'd left behind because it was too big for her new place. The one I'd convinced myself was mine because I paid for it. But everything in the apartment was haunted. The kitchen where she'd organized her pills. The bathroom where I'd installed grab bars. The bedroom where she'd slept restlessly, fighting the disease that was slowly stealing her mobility. I'd won. I'd gotten my life back. I'd freed myself from the burden of caring for someone who needed care. But victory felt like loss. Freedom felt like prison. Independence felt like the loneliest word in the language. I poured myself a drink and tried to enjoy my triumph. But all I could taste was the bitter flavor of choices that couldn't be undone. I'd chosen myself over her. Comfort over compassion. Easy over right. And I'd have to live with that choice for the rest of my life. The apartment was quiet. Clean. Perfect. And I'd never hated a place more. Chapter 6: The Reckoning. 6 months after Noelle moved out, I saw her at a coffee shop downtown. I was meeting a client, running late as always, when I spotted her in the corner booth. She was grading papers, her red pen moving with the familiar precision I remembered. But there was something different about her. Something I couldn't quite identify. She looked settled. Calm. Like someone who'd found peace in a place I'd never expected her to find it. I stood frozen by the entrance, watching her. She was wearing a blue sweater I'd never seen before. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She looked like herself, but also like someone new. Someone who'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. Someone who'd survived me. The client meeting was a disaster. I couldn't focus, couldn't listen, couldn't pretend to care about marketing strategies and profit margins. All I could think about was the woman in the coffee shop, the life she was building without me, the peace she'd found in the wreckage I'd left behind. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I looked her up online. Her social media was sparse but revealing. Pictures of her new apartment, small but bright, with grab bars that looked like they belonged there. Photos of her students' artwork. A few shots of her with friends I didn't recognize, laughing at restaurants I'd never been to. She was living. Not just surviving, but actually living. There was a recent post about a support group she'd joined. Grateful for the community I've found, she'd written. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering who you really are when everything else falls away. I stared at those words for a long time. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering who you really are when everything else falls away. She was talking about her diagnosis. About the way illness had stripped away pretense and revealed her strength. But I couldn't help wondering if she was also talking about me. About the way my abandonment had revealed something essential about her character. I'd thought I was devastating her. Instead, I'd liberated her. The realization hit like a physical blow. I'd been carrying the weight of my guilt like a badge of honor, proof that I'd sacrificed something important. But what if I hadn't sacrificed anything? What if I just left? What if she was better off without me? The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying. Because if she was better off without me, what did that say about what I'd brought to her life? What did that say about who I was? I started paying attention to things I'd missed before. The way couples looked at each other in restaurants. The way they navigated challenges together. The way they shared burdens without keeping score. I watched Marcus with his wife, Elena, who'd been dealing with chronic pain for years. I watched how he anticipated her needs without making her feel helpless. How he advocated for her without making himself the hero. How he loved her not despite her limitations, but as a complete person who happened to have limitations. I watched what I could have been. The dating became more difficult. Women would ask about my past relationships, and I'd find myself stumbling over the story I'd created. The fiction of my single, uncomplicated life felt increasingly hollow. "You're so mysterious," Amanda said after our 4th date. "It's like you sprang into existence fully formed." "I'm just private," I said. "Or you're running from something." She was right. I was running from the truth about who I was. What I'd done. The choice I'd made and the woman I'd abandoned. I started having physical symptoms. Headaches. Insomnia. A persistent feeling of nausea that no amount of antacids could touch. My doctor ran tests, found nothing wrong, suggested stress management. "Are you going through any major life changes?" she asked. "No," I lied. "Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. I was falling apart in slow motion, and no one could see it because I'd gotten so good at performing normalcy. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was at home, eating dinner alone, when I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Antoine Dubois?" The voice was professional, clinical. "Yes." "This is Dr. Rahman from the Parkinson's Center. I'm calling about Noelle Moreau. You're listed as her emergency contact." My blood turned to ice. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's stable now, but she had a fall this afternoon. She's at Montreal General. She's asking for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. She'd had a fall. She was in the hospital. And she was asking for me. Me. The man who'd evicted her from her home. Who'd abandoned her when she needed help most. Who'd chosen his own comfort over her safety. "I'll be right there," I said. The drive to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept thinking about all the things that could have happened. All the ways I could have prevented this if I'd been there. All the reasons she might have fallen that could have been avoided if she'd still been living in our apartment with its grab bars and ramps and safety modifications. She was in room 314, awake but groggy. Her left arm was in a sling, and there was a bandage on her forehead. She looked small in the hospital bed, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. "You came," she said when she saw me. "Of course I came." She smiled, and it was like being forgiven for something I didn't deserve forgiveness for. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Dislocated shoulder. Mild concussion. Could have been worse." "What happened?" I was carrying groceries up the stairs to my apartment. Lost my balance. She paused. The stairs are narrow. Steep. Not like the ramp you built. The ramp I built. The one I'd made her leave behind. Noelle, Don't, she said quietly. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't make this about you. The words were gentle but firm. A boundary I wasn't allowed to cross. Can I do anything? I asked. Do you need anything? I need you to update my emergency contact information. Remove your name. Add my friend Karen. It was a small thing, but it felt like a door closing. The last official connection between us severed. Of course, I said. Thank you for coming, she said. It means something that you came. I wanted to say more. Wanted to explain, to apologize, to somehow make right the thing I'd broken. But she was already turning away, already dismissing me with the kindness she'd always shown even when I didn't deserve it. I left the hospital and drove home through the city streets, past the coffee shop where I'd seen her, past the apartment building where she now lived, past all the places that had become part of her new life. A life I'd forced her to build alone. That night, I sat in my empty apartment and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd done. Not just the legal eviction, but the emotional abandonment. Not just the inconvenience I'd avoided, but the love I destroyed. I told myself I was being practical, realistic, self-protective. But sitting there in the silence I'd paid for with someone else's security, I finally understood what I really was. I was a coward who dressed up his cowardice as wisdom. I was a man who'd chosen himself over someone who'd chosen me. I was someone who'd mistaken convenience for happiness, and isolation for peace. And I was going to have to live with that knowledge for the rest of my life. The apartment felt smaller than ever. The freedom I'd fought for felt like prison. The life I'd recovered felt like death. I'd won everything I thought I wanted. And I'd never been more miserable. Chapter 7, The Confession. The bar on Rue Saint-Denis stays open until 3 a.m., which is exactly what I need tonight. It's the kind of place where no one asks questions, where you can sit in a corner booth and slowly poison yourself with whiskey and regret. I've been coming here for 3 weeks now, ever since the hospital. Ever since I saw what I'd done to her life reflected in a dislocated shoulder and a mild concussion. Ever since I realized that my freedom had been purchased with her safety. The bartender knows my order now. Double whiskey, neat. No ice, no conversation. Just the burn of alcohol and the comfort of strangers who don't know my story. But tonight feels different. Tonight, the weight of what I've been carrying feels too heavy to bear alone. There's a woman at the bar. Mid-40s, wedding ring, the kind of tired that comes from a long day dealing with other people's problems. She's nursing a glass of wine and checking her phone periodically. Rough day? I ask, sliding onto the stool next to her. She looks up, assessing. Aren't they all? I'm Antoine. Marie. And before you ask, yes, I'm married. Happily. Just need an hour away from being needed by everyone. I understand that, I say. Though I solved that problem in a different way. How's that? I made sure no one needs me. She laughs, but it's not a happy sound. That's one approach. How's it working out? Terribly. We sit in comfortable silence for a moment. Sometimes strangers are the only people you can tell the truth to. Want to talk about it? She asks. And suddenly, I do. I want to tell someone the real story. Not the sanitized version I've been telling myself, but the ugly truth about what I did and why I did it. I evicted my girlfriend, I say. Evicted? She got sick. Parkinson's disease. And I couldn't handle it. So I kicked her out of the apartment we shared. Legally evicted her like she was a tenant who'd stopped paying rent. Marie's wine glass pauses halfway to her lips. Jesus! She lived there for 3 years. It was her home. But the lease was in my name, so legally I could do it. And I did. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been lying to myself for months about why I did it. And tonight I can't lie anymore. The whiskey is making me brave. Or stupid. Or honest. Maybe they're the same thing. I told myself it was because I was burned out. Because I was sacrificing my life for her. Because I deserved better than being a caregiver. But that wasn't true. It was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. I finished my drink and signal for another. The whole truth is that I couldn't stand what she made me see about myself. Which was that I'm selfish. That I'm weak. That I'm the kind of person who abandons people when they need help most. Marie is quiet for a long moment. How long were you together? For years. She was there when I lost my job. When my father died. When I had my quarter-life crisis and couldn't get out of bed for a month. She stuck by me through everything. And when she got sick, I ran. I dressed it up as a mutual decision, as what was best for both of us. But I ran. Do you regret it? The question hangs in the air between us. It's the first time anyone has asked me directly. The first time I've had to answer. I regret who it revealed me to be, I say finally. I regret that I was capable of it. I regret that I chose comfort over courage. But do you regret leaving her? I think about Noelle in the coffee shop, grading papers with calm concentration. I think about her social media posts, her new life, a community of friends who chose to stay. No, I say. I think she's better off without me. And you? I'm miserable. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I'm the most miserable I've ever been. Marie nods like she understands something I haven't figured out yet. My husband has MS, she says. Diagnosed 5 years ago. I look at her wedding ring, at the way she's been checking her phone. And you're here alone. He's at home with the kids. Tuesday is my night. One night a week where I get to pretend I'm just Marie, not Marie the caregiver. Does that make you selfish? It makes me human. There's a difference between taking care of yourself and abandoning the people who need you. What's the difference? Time. Intent. Love. She finishes her wine. I go home. I show up. I choose him every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I couldn't do that. You chose not to do that. That's different. The distinction feels important, but I'm too drunk to understand why. She had a fall, I tell her. Last month. Ended up in the hospital. I was still her emergency contact. Did you go? Yes. How was she? Gracious. Kind. She thanked me for coming. She didn't yell at me or blame me or make me feel guilty. She just let me help for those few minutes. And how did that make you feel? Like the worst person in the world. Like I'd thrown away something precious for something worthless. Marie pulls out her phone, checks a text. That's my husband, she says. Asking if I'm okay. If I need anything. If I want him to come get me. After 5 years of MS. After 5 years of marriage. The MS is just part of it. Not the whole thing. She stands up, leaves money on the bar. Can I tell you something? I nod. Your girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, she's going to be fine. She's going to build a life and find people who choose her every day. She's going to be okay. And me. You're going to have to learn to live with knowing you weren't one of those people. That when it mattered, you chose yourself. She starts to leave, then turns back. But here's the thing about choices. They define us. What you did tells a story about who you are. The question is that the story you want to keep telling? After she leaves, I sit at the bar for another hour, drinking and thinking about stories. About the one I've been telling myself, and the one I've been telling others, and the one that's actually true. The truth is simple and ugly. I am a man who abandons people who need him. I am a man who chooses comfort over compassion. I am a man who breaks promises and breaks hearts and breaks homes. But Marie was right about one thing: choices define us. And I'm still making choices. Every day, I choose to live with what I've done without trying to make it right. I choose to date women I don't love because they don't demand love from me. I choose to work late and drink alone and pretend that emptiness is peace. I choose to be the man who left instead of the man who could stay. The bar is closing. I pay my tab and walk out into the October night, past couples holding hands, past families heading home, past all the people who figured out how to love each other despite the inconvenience. I walk home to my empty apartment, to my empty bed, to my empty life. But for the first time in months, I'm not lying to myself about why it's empty. I emptied it. I chose emptiness. And now I have to live with that choice. The apartment is quiet when I get home. clean, perfect, exactly as I left it, exactly as I wanted it. And I've never hated a place more. I sit on the couch and look around at the life I've built, at the freedom I've purchased, at the peace I've created. It feels like death, but it's the death I chose, the death I paid for, the death I deserve. Tomorrow I'll wake up and go to work and pretend to be a functioning human being. I'll smile at colleagues and flirt with women and perform the role of someone who has his life together. But tonight, in the darkness of my empty apartment, I can admit the truth. I am a man who had everything and threw it away because having everything was inconvenient. I am a man who chose himself over someone who chose me. I am a man who will spend the rest of his life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to stay. But I wasn't brave. I was a coward. And this empty apartment, this hollow life, this perfect freedom, this is what cowardice looks like. This is what I chose. This is what I deserve. Chapter 8. The Weight of Choosing. 2 years have passed since that night at the bar. 2 years since I spoke the truth out loud to a stranger who understood the difference between self-care and abandonment. I still live in the same apartment. Still work at the same job. Still perform the same routine of a man who has his life together. But something has changed. The lies I told myself have worn thin. The justifications have cracked. The careful fiction of my victimhood has collapsed under the weight of what I know to be true. I destroyed something beautiful because it required me to be better than I was. This morning, I wake up to news that stops my heart. My phone shows a text from Marcus, saw the obituary. I'm sorry, man. Call me if you need anything. Obituary. My hands shake as I search online. But it's not Noelle. It's her father. The man who taught her to paint, who called her every Sunday, who visited her in the hospital after her fall. The man who never knew that his daughter's boyfriend had evicted her from her home. The funeral is this afternoon. I stare at the address of the church, at the time, at the list of survivors that includes beloved daughter Noelle. I have no right to be there. No right to intrude on her grief. No right to contaminate her mourning with my presence. But I can't stay away. I arrive early and sit in the back row, trying to make myself invisible. The church fills slowly with people who loved him, who will miss him, who chose to show up when showing up mattered. And then I see her. Noelle walks down the aisle with her mother, supporting her with the same gentle strength she'd once offered me. She's wearing a black dress I've never seen, her hair longer than it was in the hospital. She moves carefully but steadily, the tremor in her left hand barely noticeable. She looks like someone who's learned to carry grief without being crushed by it. The service is beautiful. Person after person stands to speak about a man who was kind, generous, present. Who showed up for his family, his friends, his community. Who chose love over convenience again and again. I think about the kind of man he was. The kind of man he raised his daughter to be. The kind of man I never became. After the service, There's a reception in the church basement. I should leave. I should slip out quietly and let her grieve in peace. But I can't seem to move. She sees me as I'm standing to go. Our eyes meet across the room, and for a moment, time stops. She excuses herself from the conversation she's having and walks over. Antoine, she says. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry for your loss, I say. He was a good man. He was. She pauses. He asked about you, you know. Near the end. He never understood what happened between us. What did you tell him? That sometimes people grow apart. That sometimes love isn't enough. Love isn't enough. The words hit like a physical blow because they're not true. Love was enough. Love is always enough. What wasn't enough was my courage to act on it. Noelle, I don't, she says quietly. Not here. Not today. She's right. This isn't the place for my confession, my guilt, my desperate need to be forgiven. This is her day to grieve her father, not to absolve me of my sins. I should go, I say. Yes, she agrees. You should. But as I turn to leave, she calls my name. Antoine. I look back. I hope you find what you're looking for, she says. I hope you find a way to be happy. It's the same thing she wrote in her note when she moved out. The same kindness she's always shown me, even when I don't deserve it. I want to tell her that I'm not looking for happiness anymore. That I've learned the difference between happiness and peace. That I've learned the difference between getting what you want and wanting what you get. But this isn't about me. It never was. Take care of yourself, I say instead. I always do, she replies. And she does. She always has. Even when I made it harder. I drive home through the city, past the coffee shop where I saw her, past the hospital where she fell, past all the places that mark the geography of my failure. At home, I pour myself a drink and sit on the couch that used to be ours. I think about her father, about the life he lived, about the legacy he left. A daughter who knows how to love without keeping score. A family who shows up for each other. A community who will miss him. What legacy will I leave? What will people say about me when I'm gone? That I was successful? That I had a nice apartment? That I was smart enough to avoid inconvenience? Or will they say what I know to be true, that I was a man who had everything and threw it away because having everything required me to be more than I was willing to be? I think about the conversation with Marie at the bar. About choices and stories and the difference between taking care of yourself and abandoning people who need you. I think about Marcus and Elena, about the way they navigate her chronic pain together. About the way they choose each other every day, even when it's hard. I think about Noelle's father, who showed up for his family for 68 years. Who was there for birthdays and holidays and hospital visits? Who chose presents over convenience, love over comfort? I think about the man I could have been if I'd been brave enough to stay. But I wasn't brave. I was a coward who dressed up his cowardice as wisdom. And now I have to live with that choice. The apartment is quiet, clean, perfect. Everything I thought I wanted. But sitting here in the silence I paid for with someone else's security, I finally understand what I really am. I am a man who chose himself over someone who chose him. I am a man who mistook convenience for happiness, isolation for peace. I am a man who will spend the rest of his life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to love someone more than I loved my own comfort. But I wasn't brave enough. I chose fear over love, ease over effort, myself over us. And this empty apartment, this hollow life, this perfect freedom, this is what that choice looks like. This is what I chose. This is what I deserve. The weight of choosing. That's what I carry now. Not the weight of caring for someone who needed care, but the weight of choosing not to care. The weight of choosing myself over someone who would have chosen me. The weight of choosing fear over love. The weight of choosing to be the kind of man who abandons people who need him. That weight is heavier than any burden I avoided. Heavier than any sacrifice I refused to make. It's the weight of knowing who I really am. And it's a weight I'll carry for the rest of my life. The apartment is quiet. The night is long. The bed is empty. This is what I chose. This is what choosing myself cost me. This is what I have to live with. And I'm finally done lying to myself about whether it was worth it. It wasn't. But it's too late to choose differently. Some choices define us forever. This is mine. Epilogue, 3 years later. I'm sitting in the same bar on Rue Saint-Denis where I first told the truth about what I did. The same corner booth, the same whiskey, the same weight of regret that follows me everywhere. But tonight is different. Tonight, I'm not here to drink myself into honesty. I'm here because I have something to say, and this is the only place where I've ever been able to say it. I've been sober for 6 months now. Not because I'm recovering from alcoholism, but because I finally got tired of drowning in my own choices. Tired of using whiskey to wash away the taste of what I'd done. The bartender is different. Younger. He doesn't know my story, doesn't know that I used to come here to confess my sins to strangers who couldn't absolve me. I order club soda and lime. It tastes like nothing, which is perfect. Nothing tastes like what I deserve. My phone buzzes. A text from Sarah, the woman I've been seeing for 8 months. She's kind, intelligent, successful. She deserves better than someone who's still haunted by the ghost of who he used to be. Dinner tomorrow, she asks. I stare at the message for a long time before responding. I need to tell you something first. Something about my past. Everything okay? No. But it's time to stop pretending it is. For 3 years, I've been editing my history. Creating a fiction where I was single and focused on my career. Where I'd never lived with someone who needed care. Where I'd never made the choice that defined me. But I'm tired of fiction. Tired of performing a version of myself that never existed. Tomorrow, I'll tell Sarah the truth. About Noel. About the eviction. About the kind of man I revealed myself to be when love became inconvenient. She'll probably leave. Most people would. Most people should. But I can't keep building relationships on lies. Can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not. I am a man who abandoned someone who needed him. That's not the whole story of who I am, but it's the most important part. It's the part that defines everything else. I look around the bar at the other patrons. A couple in their 50s, sharing a bottle of wine and looking at each other like they still have secrets to discover. A group of friends celebrating something, their laughter genuine and warm. A woman alone at the bar, wedding ring catching the light as she checks her phone. All of them are living lives that require them to show up for other people. To choose love over convenience. To be present when presence is difficult. All of them are doing what I couldn't do. I think about Noel often. Not with the desperate longing of someone who wants to undo the past, but with the quiet recognition of someone who understands what he lost. I know she's doing well. Teaching full-time now. Living in a house she bought with a small inheritance from her father. I know because Marcus told me, and I know Marcus tells me because he thinks I should know. I know she's in a relationship. Someone who teaches at the same school. Someone who shows up for parent-teacher conferences and school plays and probably doesn't think twice about rearranging his schedule for her medical appointments. Someone who chose her. Every day. Even when it's hard. I know she's happy. And I know she's happy without me. That should hurt more than it does. But mostly, I'm grateful. Grateful that she found someone who could love her the way she deserved to be loved. Grateful that my leaving made space for someone better to arrive. Grateful that she didn't waste her life waiting for me to become the man I never could be. The truth is, I'm not a villain. I'm not a monster. I'm just a man who wasn't brave enough to love someone more than he loved his own comfort. I'm a man who chose himself over someone who chose him. And I'm a man who has to live with that choice. The weight of choosing. It's heavier than any burden I avoided. Heavier than any sacrifice I refused to make. But it's mine to carry. And I'm finally done pretending it's not. I finish my club soda and leave money on the table. Outside, the October air is sharp and clean. The city is full of people going home to each other, choosing each other, showing up for each other. I walk home to my empty apartment. To my empty bed. To my empty life. But for the first time in 3 years, I'm not lying to myself about why it's empty. I emptied it. I chose emptiness. And tomorrow, I'll start choosing differently. Not because I think I can undo what I did. Not because I think I can become someone I'm not. But because I'm tired of being the man who left. I want to be the man who stays. It's too late to be that man for Noel. But maybe it's not too late to be that man for someone else. Maybe it's not too late to choose love over convenience. Love over comfort. Us over me. The apartment is quiet when I get home. clean, perfect. But it doesn't feel like death anymore. It feels like a beginning. The beginning of choosing differently. The beginning of being someone who shows up. The beginning of carrying the weight of choosing without being crushed by it. I am a man who abandoned someone who needed him. But I don't have to be that man forever. I can choose to be someone else. Someone better. Someone who stays. The weight of choosing will always be with me. But maybe, if I'm lucky, if I'm brave, if I'm willing to be better than I was, maybe I can carry it forward instead of letting it drag me down. Maybe I can choose to be the man I should have been. It's too late for Noel. But it's not too late for me. End. Author's note. This novel explores the devastating impact of abandonment disguised as self-care. Antoine's story is not one of redemption. There is no moment where his actions are justified or forgiven. Instead, it's an examination of how we rationalize our worst impulses, how we convince ourselves that choosing comfort over compassion is somehow noble. The weight of choosing is real. Every day, we decide whether to show up for the people who need us, whether to love despite inconvenience, whether to be the kind of person others can count on. Antoine chose himself over someone who chose him. The consequences of that choice, the emptiness, the guilt, the knowledge of who he really is, are his to carry. This is a story about accountability. About the difference between explanation and excuse. About the recognition that some choices define us forever, and the hope that we can still choose to be better than we were. Antoine's confession is not absolution. It's acknowledgement. And sometimes, acknowledgement is the first step toward becoming someone worth confessing to.